What's up, Ramblers? Your favorite CEO is back. And before we begin today's podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. And follow Assistance HQ and Offsource HQ across all platforms to stay up to date on the latest content, updates, and more. And remember, if you need a virtual assistant, visit us at offsource.tech. Now, before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Good morning, guys. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. I know we have been slightly absent, but I promise to bring an amazing guest every single time. And I think I have with us the beastiest of them all so far, Rob Genovesi. How are you doing today? Introduce yourself. Let us know what's going on.
I'm doing awesome, Angela. Appreciate that. I'm Rob Genovesi. I'm the founder of Unleash My Beast brand, and I'm a brand builder. I help companies and individuals build a brand that stands out from the crowd. I teach them how to do that through a unique branding program that I have.
Now, I've known Rob for roughly about almost a year now. We've been networking for a pretty long time. We've passed each other, and so this is the very first time that we've been able to sit down and have like an actual conversation in this kind of manner. And I've seen his work before, and Rob does an amazing job. I've seen how he brings brands from cluttered, that's the word I'm going to use, very much cluttered, all the way to fully pristine and shining. And so if you're one of those people that's like, you have 4 different ideas for brands, Rob is definitely the person that you're going to want to go to kind of bring it together, merge it, and then get everything nice and clean. But branding is completely different than marketing and advertising. Give us a little bit about how you got into specifically branding and why you chose that as your niche.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it actually was a turning point in my company. When I started the company in 2015, after spending 25 years in corporate America managing creative teams, I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to do something that actually made a difference. I felt like I was just kind of going through the motions in a job, not being able to do the things I wanted to do. So when I started the company, it was a website and design company. I've been a graphic designer for over 30 years. So obviously I was leveraging that skill set and that experience by opening the website and design company. And I actually didn't do a lot of website design when I opened it, but as everybody knows, everybody needs a website. Everybody has a website. Everybody knows they need one, or they need an upgraded one or something. So it was a natural direction for me to go into, and I got clients fast. I really did. It was not hard to get clients. But what I started to discover was, number one, from a business standpoint, margins were way too low. And, not for nothing, but, I wanted to build a pretty large business, a substantial income. I didn't want to be a factory for designer websites. And that's kind of the way I felt building websites. Not to take anything away from people who are doing that, but for me, I wanted to make more of an impact. And the turning point came one day. I had this, he wasn't a client yet, but he called me up and he's like, hey, I got your name. I Googled and I got your name and I went to your website. I like what I saw, but, I'm wondering if you can help me get a website. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, of course. Like, what am I going to say? No. So he goes, well, let me tell you. He goes, I was working with another designer, another developer, and I paid him $1,200 and I never got a website. And I'm like, oh no, what happened? He said, no. He goes, it was fine. We just went back and forth for about 6 months, and he couldn't really get what I wanted. We couldn't understand each other. He didn't really get me. So after 6 months, we decided to just call it quits. I paid him. He did a little bit of work, but I don't have a website. Do you think you can help me? And the words that came out of my mouth were absolutely. But in my head, right? In my head, I'm thinking, well, what if the developer wasn't the problem? What if the client is a problem client? And how do I know that me as a designer am able to give him what he wants? Because maybe he's really particular. Because you see, design is very subjective. My design style is different from 10 other designers. That doesn't mean any one of us is better than the other. It's subjective. So I thought, okay, I need this client, because at the time I'm like, I really need every client I could get, because I was looking to pay the bills. And so I took a little bit different approach. And throughout the conversation, Angela, he actually threw out the word brand. he was kind of rambling, right? And this is the name of your podcast, but he was rambling on and on. He's like, I'm an underdog in my area and I'm kind of newer, but there's some guys that are veterans in the industry. And he was a contractor. And he said, I need to be able to do something to set myself apart. I need I need a brand or something. This website has to be something different. And when he said brand, I made a mental note. And so in order to help him, I decided I better take a more strategic approach so that I make sure that I get him what he wants and I can get the business and have him be happy, because I didn't want to be case number 2 where he fires the website guy because we don't get each other. So I asked him a lot of questions. I interviewed him. I talked about his business. I asked him how he started and what made him different and all these things. I knew I had a little basic understanding of brand strategy, but not a lot. But I asked him just enough things where I went away and he contracted me to build the website, but I designed a logo. I not only designed the website, but I wrote all the marketing copy for it. And I packaged it up and I presented it to him. And, he's this Italian guy. I'm Italian, so it's cool, but he was sitting there. And if you ever talk to an Italian guy, and he rocks back and forth in his chair and he doesn't say anything for about 2 minutes, you're starting to get nervous because you don't know if he's going to kiss you on the cheek or smack you. It's like, I'm like, uh-oh. So he finally decides to say something, and he points at me and he goes, "You absolutely nailed it. I don't know how you did it. It's like you were in my head." He goes, "How did you do that?" And it was at that moment, Angela, I became a brand strategist because number one, he bought the logo and the website and everything. We made some tweaks, but not a lot changed. He experienced an uptick in business because of the website and the branding. People liked what they saw. They liked him. They were attracted to it. And even to this day, I talked to him about 6 months ago. He called me up. It was about a year and a half after I worked with him. And he was like, "Business is great." He's like, "Thank you. It's what you did for me that has raised my business. And I'm busy 7 days a week." And he wanted to be busy 7 days a week. Some people, that's not their desire, right? Not everybody wants to work 7 days a week, but he did, and he was happy. So that day I became a brand strategist.
You said something very key in there, and I think it's very important. Outside of you mentioning and saying brand things, which we all love, but you said that you took a different approach in that you had to really listen. And it's, as you said, subjective. You have a different style than, a different designer. And so that's going to give you a different feel, but you don't want to, say that you're necessarily better than somebody. But then there's the idea of the how good is good and how do you know that you're better than anyone in terms of, your level and skills. So what makes, a designer go from his work being subjective in a sense to objectively good? Is that possible? Is that a thing? Can you say that, some designers this is subjectively good, but objectively, this is overall great?
So that's I love how you're just teeing them up for me, because it's almost like I wrote the questions just so I can answer them. But it's an amazing question, because that's the other part of what I do. So in addition to being a brand builder and working with clients and helping to build a brand with them, because it's very much collaborative, taking that more strategic approach, I write brand strategy. The other part of the other parts of my life is helping designers become more strategic thinkers. Because as a designer, the pain that we go through is I show my client a few designs, and no matter what I show them, for the most part, they have changes. It's not quite what they wanted. They were picturing something else. They show me other people's designs and go, "I want it more like this." And so you start to get in this area of being very subjective, in that I have my personal taste and opinion, and so do you. So when you as a designer get together with a client, you're immediately not going to be on the same page, right? It's like a work of art. You get 10 people standing in front of this fabulous painting, and then you ask each person what they got out of it. And every person has this little bit of something. Some person can see something happy in a painting, and some person can look at the same painting and feel very melancholy about it because it reminds them of something. It's interpretive, right? So when you look at design as art, yes, it's going to hit people differently according to their filter, their paradigm, their perspective. But design isn't fine art. Design is design. It's specifically meant to communicate something
Mm.
to somebody else, right? So what is that intent of the design? So a design, if it's meant to make you feel joyous, depending on what it is, if the brand is a party company, well, you wouldn't use melancholy type imagery and feel and voice.
Right.
So the design has to be something that's really upbeat and festive and party like. Well, that's even subject to interpretation, because what's party like to me may be different party to you. So what do you do? Well, this was the problem that I actually solved. You can see, I wasn't looking to become a brand strategist. I
Right.
was looking to sell my designs because I'd been through
Mm.
that pain. So what happened was, this was the interesting part. Because if I just presented him with the website design, what would he have done? He would have come back with changes and, well, I don't quite understand this. And why are we doing this? And I like this. And why are you using blue? I like green, and all these things, right? So now we get in a battle of personalities. But since I wrote the brand strategy and I said, here's the brand, here's what it stands for, here's what it is, here's its purpose, here's what's make you different. And then once that's written, I come up with a design that is in agreement with the brand strategy. Guess what? This is perfect. I love this. And it happens every time to me. Every time I do designs now, they buy them without revision. Why? Because they bought the brand strategy. The design supports the strategy. Now, guess what? I'm now able to sell my designs without going back and forth. And it's only because I started with a strategic mindset. So that's why you have to not reduce, but run design first objectively through strategy, which is objective. It accomplishes an objective, a purpose, and then say the design goes, okay, here's how we're going to accomplish that purpose. And they buy the design every time.
I think that you gave enough value in 5 minutes to cover an entire podcast with that right there, because that someone's going to hear that and somehow there's going to be a designer listening. He's going to hear it and implement, and then be able to sell his designs first try.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing, because when I go in, when I'm, I guess doing some small design work for certain things, I always have the idea that, okay, they're going to have edits. They have to have edits. Like, there's no way for them to not have edits. And you kind of just break that entirely, selling it first time. But there's something in there that's a skill, I think, that you have, that you're very, very good at, that makes you able to do that, which is listening. Like you said, the guy said that you were in his head, and I think the best way to be in his head is to really read between the lines. What goes through your head when you're listening to someone describe what they want?
Yeah. So when we start out with a client, we do this discovery session. I call it a breakthrough session, which is, it's breaking through to what is the purpose behind the company. What motivates a person who founded the company to build the company? A lot of times, and we know this, a lot of the greatest companies were formed out of a need, or out of a need to not be like somebody else. Many times have we heard a company say, well, we started this company because we didn't like what we saw in the marketplace that was available. We wanted to do it our way. So people take a different spin. They have their own approach. That right there is usually the differentiating factor that makes them different. They just don't know that that's part of their brand. So I'm bringing that out. Also, their purpose, why do they even exist? And, business exists really to make money, but the person who builds the business, why did they create it? What did they want to accomplish in the world? It's not just to make money, contrary to what most people think. Most entrepreneurs, most business drivers, they're looking to impact some kind of change.
Right.
And so that's really what the branding part is. It's helping to make a change through your endeavor, no matter what it is. So listening, when I'm asking questions, and I ask a ton of questions in the breakthrough session, I'm listening to the answers, but I'm listening to the words between the answers, because sometimes that's the big revelation. When they think something's not important, I've learned enough to listen to the things they're not saying, or if they give an answer and it becomes distinctly impassioned, where maybe they were just giving me pat answers or not particularly emotional, but then I'll ask a follow-up question to dig a little deeper and go, why did you feel that way when you decided to launch the company? Let me tell you something, Rob. When I looked around and I saw what was going on, it made me sick. Now, when you hear that, whatever comes next, that's the thing, right? That's what makes them a unique brand.
Right. Okay, that's very unique then. But traditionally and also uniquely, you've been in design for 30 years, right? And so there's some story to you, Rob. What is that story? Like creative for 30 years, is it kind of like a Mad Men situation? Like what is Rob's story in how he got to Unleash?
Well, it really was that frustration because, when I tell the story of that client, I needed the client because I needed the money. I started the company and I didn't have startup capital. I actually started the company while I had a full-time job. So I was building it in between my workday world in which I was away from my house for 10, 11 hours a day. So lunch hours every day, I would disappear into my car with my phone and my laptop and I'm building my company. Everybody's like, hey, where are you going? Wait, you don't like us? You don't want to eat with us? And I'm like, oh, and I didn't want to tell them because, I could get fired for building a
No,
company,
hold on. I don't mean to interrupt that, but that is a completely different area of time right there. I want to go deeper in that. Now, it is very, very hard, especially for the entrepreneurs, right? It's hard to take the leap, right? But you had to take the leap where you could have gotten, like, if you got caught in trying to build, you could have been fired. What was that time period like where you're trying to work a full-time job and secretly build a company?
Wow, nobody's ever asked me that before. It was a very emotional time for me because I took that job at that time when I started the company. See, it went back to the job before that and my second layoff of my life, in which the job I got laid off from that sparked my company. I was a high performer. In fact, I was brought in to turn around a creative department that was in shambles.
Wow.
And I did it in 6 months with practically no staff and no cooperation from anybody in other departments. And not that I'm so great, but I knew how to do it and I did it. And still I got called into human resources and they let me go because sales were low. And here's the thing, they let me go. They kept the person who wrecked the department in the first place. So what does that tell me? There's politics involved.
Right.
And I got ticked. So I went out gracefully and I said, totally understand, but I got laid off. It was triggered by low sales, but specifically me because they couldn't get rid of the person that wrecked the department because of political reasons. So I went home and I told my wife, I said, I got laid off. I said, but I'll get another job. But today I start my own company because I was ticked and I got tired of being cast aside after giving my all. I decided I want to be in control of my future. So when I started the company, as I said, it was August 8th, 2015. I'll never forget.
Why does that day ring that bell?
Because that was the day I put my stake in the ground and I said, I'm going to build something that I will one day retire from, that will be my own. And I'm going to buy my freedom back because I didn't want to work a job anymore. I did it for too many years and constantly never made enough money, always was undervalued, and eventually got cast aside. So after starting that and building the website company, but that one client, when I realized the impact it made in his company, and here's what's interesting. So I made an impact in his business, as I'd said, he got results. The funny part is I was still operating under the old brand. Unleash My Beast brand as a company didn't even exist at that point. It was a different company with a different look, a different feel, a different brand. It was very mainstream. It was very forgettable. And when I got this guy results and I did it for a couple more clients, I went, oh my gosh, my clients are getting more clients and better clients more than I am. And I realized my brand was horrible. So I completely ripped it down, put myself through my own process, and I developed the Beast brand. So Unleash My Beast brand came out of me understanding how I helped somebody else and then doing it for myself. And when I realized that, I went, whoa, because I spent 2 years and got no attention on social media, no attention from anybody. Right. Within 2 months after starting Unleash My Beast brand and changing everything over, my messaging, my look, everything, I got all kinds of attention. I was getting inquiries. I wasn't getting a lot of clients yet, but the attention turned my way and people were starting to take notice. That was a big thing. So that impacted my own business and other people's business. I realized oh, this branding thing, I can make a real impact in business and I can help them. And that's what I wanted to do.
That's very special right there, especially because when you were talking about, it's very hard to be in a place where there's politics, right? You want to build, everyone wants to kind of build something for themselves, but it's very hard to then go out and actually do that, to put the words to the pavement, hit the ground running, as so to speak. What is the transition like from the corporate life to business life, right? When you officially made that transition over and you're like, you know what, I'm officially done. I'm stepping out on my own. You have a family and everything at this point. Is it turmoilous? Was it easy? Was your wife supportive? Like I've heard a lot of times that can be a very key factor into how successful that can be.
So when I started the company, I was about 48, which is late in life to start a company, but I had the job. And that last job that I had was probably the worst job I ever had. Now, I made the most money there, but in terms of what I was doing every day, it was mind numbing. I mean,
Right.
when I say mind numbing, it was the opposite of creative. It was so mundane and redundant and boring. I took the job because I needed the money.
Mhm.
But the whole concept of I need this now until I can leave or I get laid off, because I knew both were inevitable. I was either going to leave because I was making enough money in my business, or they were going to lay me off, because when you're 48 in the creative industry and you have a job, you are becoming more and more unmarketable, because the thinking is that you're out of ideas, old man. Right? And look, that by and large, that's true, because as people get older, they become less engaged, they become less creative, they stick to what had worked for years before. But that wasn't true for me. I always had new ideas. And so nobody would listen to me anyway because of my age. So I thought, when I get laid off or I'm going to leave, it'll be fine. Now, it was a bad time to get laid off. July of 2019. My wife had a new business for about a year. She was a job person for years too. She started her own business. Then when I started the business, when I got laid off from that last job, we didn't have the money for me to do that. I got laid off and I got a severance, but it wasn't a lot. So is it scary? It is scary. But there's one thing that I learned, and the good part about being 48 and having been kicked around, was you learn to dig in your heels, and you learn to have a little bit of faith and a good work ethic, and just work to make it happen. And I never thought about not being able to pay the rent. I just thought about, let me keep building this brand and building the business. And most people thought I was crazy. In fact, my brother-in-law, my parents, I remember a couple of months. Now, when I got laid off, I told everybody, I'm not getting another job. I'm building this business, spread the word. That's it. Did you know that my parents, my brother-in-law, family members come to me a month and a half, 2 months later? So have you found a job yet? I was like, what are you talking about? If I found a job, I'm not getting a job.
Just told you.
Just told you. But they don't understand that, because to them, it's too risky. You'll never make it, is what they're saying. You're too old. It's too late in life. Business is too risky. Just go do this, take the safe route and get a job. And I just got finished demonstrating to them that it wasn't a safe route for me, maybe for some people, but I got laid off twice, right? So that's not safe.
Right. Because then it's just at least ripped under your rug. When you have the business, you can see, oh, this is where this is going. I have some time to kind of make some moves and everything. So there's a lot of differentiations in terms of what it's like to be in corporate and what it's like. Now, I would never have guessed you were past anything, anything past 40, maybe. You look very, very good for your age. I don't know what you're doing, but it must be the hair grease or something. It's looking amazing, but
it's laughter. I laugh every day on purpose. Keeps me young.
I like that. So what do you like to do on your free time? Business owners, we usually spend a lot of time in our business, and we always hear about hustle. But when you start a business and you're already having a family, you have a lot of things to balance. What are you doing on a day-to-day to kind of help maintain your relationships? How do you stay on the balance of everything? Because I know, personally speaking, I've been the victim of, an overworked parent who's in the business, and they let their relationships kind of on the slide a little bit. What's your balance?
So many people struggle with that whole balance concept. And while it is true that you're constantly grinding in business, look, nobody has to grind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not really necessary. You have to leverage technology. You have to leverage other people. And I think the part that most people don't do is they don't document the process that worked. So one thing that I did early on, very early on, in fact, when I was even building the website company, I had clients, but I wouldn't spend 24 hours a day getting more clients or servicing clients. I would spend a couple of days a week documenting the process that led to success. So I wouldn't have to rethink it with the next client. So every time I got the next client, I was able to be very efficient with my time. I knew exactly what I was doing. I would tell them what I was going to do, and then I would make it happen so they would be happy, and they would refer me to other people. Those referrals kept me from having to market a lot or pitch because I was getting referrals, right? That's the ideal situation, is you don't have to market so much. People just refer you. So I was able to get referral after referral because of my very tight process, enjoyable process, and successful results. So I documented everything. I have an operations manual from way back then of what exactly is step one, what's step two, what's step three. Now, a lot of people won't do that because they don't have time. I'm too busy working on the client's work. I don't have time to document that stuff. No way. I gotta get this. I'm on deadline. And then I gotta hit the networking group. And then I gotta get my marketing together. I gotta make a video. And so they never document their process. And what happens is every time they start with a new client, they're starting from scratch because they're like, okay, I have to remember what I did last time, and they waste time. I didn't do that. I documented everything so that I can move quicker. And I leverage technology. I'm not a tech whiz, but getting a scheduler so I can schedule meetings without, here's my link, pick up your best time. Boom, it's done. It's in my calendar. I don't have to waste time going back and forth on email.
Right.
So it's things like that you do to create now. That leads up to your question of balance. Well, I never work on Sundays. So that means I got 6 days to work. And then I time block. Saturdays, no client meetings, but I'll work on administrative stuff, finances, maybe some marketing. Monday through Friday is different things. Tuesday and Thursday are heavy with meetings. Monday and Wednesday and Friday, not so much. Monday's wide open. I do a lot of marketing. Wednesday, I have a few meetings with peers and associates for idea generation, right? So that's key.
Right.
Friday, I have similar meetings, but I also fill that time with doing things like, coming up with some social media stuff, some marketing. So it's a matter of time blocking, yes, but being very intentional with the time that allows you to build the company so you don't fall victim to, I got this wildly successful company, but my kids hate me and my wife resents me. Like I didn't want no part of that. You have to build in time for them as well. And for me, there's gym time, there's my downtime, there's my thinking time, there's my wife time, my kids time. So you have to build it in intentionally and be very efficient with your time to get things done.
I think I know who I'm going to show this podcast episode to. So there's been a lot of things that's been going on over the past, 20 to 30 years. And as a creative, I think that's uniquely one of the only, not necessarily only, but one of the very rare kind of fields and areas that you kind of have to be part of the world to keep getting ideas. Like, how do you continuously stay creative? As you said, as you get older, people kind of phase out their ideas and everything. And it just seems to be more stagnant and not necessarily as new and refreshing. How do you keep up with staying new, staying refreshing? Because you're doing an amazing job at it, but where does that creativity come from? Is there like a creative process that you do to keep the ideas flowing?
Wow. Early on, I think any creative person struggles with understanding how to be creative. And there is ways you can learn how to be creative. A lot of people think, oh, he's a creative person or she's a very creative person and I'm not, so I can't be. And that's not true. We all have our creative genius. It just may fall in different areas. Now, I am not a good illustrator. I can't paint. I can't do anything. I'm a really good designer. I'm not even excellent. I'm a good designer. But my creativity comes out of early on. It was being inspired by other designers, by looking at design, looking at masters of their craft. And I don't care if you watch somebody who does woodworking. Like if I'm watching a master at their craft, I'm enthralled by that, because anybody who's really good, you start learning things, and they'll tell you that mastery comes out of discipline. Mastery comes out of making mistakes. Mastery comes out of learning from other masters. So when you start doing that, you start to develop your own process. And for me, the creative process is understanding the problem so well. There's an old saying, the solution to every problem lies within the problem. And when you really understand the problem, the solution becomes evident. And I was like, when I heard that, I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, that's so stupid. The problem is the problem. That's why you want to solve it. I thought it was dumb. But there's a certain amount of wisdom there, where I tend to get very deep thinking on things. And so I would ponder that. And I would go, okay, let me see. So I would examine the problem from all different angles and get people's perspective on the problem. And it is true. When you really understand the problem, how to solve it reveals itself. So then when you know how to solve it, you know what the process is for doing that as a creative person. You know what tools you have at your disposal. You know what's worked in the past for similar situations. And you're able to draw on, when you talk about the freshness, how do you stay fresh? To me, design isn't about me staying fresh as much as I stay engaged with the world and changing times and what's new and what's trending and what's coming. Sometimes it's a little bit of being able to see the future of what's the next up and coming thing. When you start to see something take root, an idea, a concept, a fashion, whatever, and you start to see it grow, especially in social media is great for this. You start to see it growing more and more in social media. You can pretty much go, okay, if that's a trend, if that's something I want to tap into, then your creativity goes that direction and you're able to stay fresh and relevant, even at the ripe old age of 54.
Now, that can be very dangerous, I think. I think I want to touch that real quick before we go. When you follow, it can be almost like, where do you see the wave at, right? So when you're riding a wave, there's the end, the beginning, the middle. And if you're at the end, it's like, oh, you're a follower. If you're at the beginning, you're a trendsetter. When you're in the middle, you're at the perfect kind of integration in between in the balance, right? But when we look at a lot of these companies today, we see a lot of logos start looking the same. We see a lot of people starting to go around the same routes. When we look at, say, SaaS products and different websites, they all have like the same template, layout, font, color, texts. And they don't all have the same designers, I would think. What do you think is the problem with a lot of these designers today? And what do you think the solution is for how a lot of some of these companies are able to stand out, where everyone is really, really looking the same? But it's about the comfortability of it, right? We want to make something that people are comfortable with. It's not too much of an outlier, but we want to be completely outlier and separate. What is the issue with a lot of these designers, and what do you think that solution would be? Personally, obviously, there's no universal kind of answer.
The problem with following and looking at different things and following what other people do, maybe jumping on the trends, designers in that world is very famous for about the turn of the year, right? Wait for January 2022, and you're going to start to see design trends for 2022. You may see them at the end of this year. What's new in design, or what's going to be the new, and so you look at it and you go, okay, am I going to copy these trends? And if they're trends, like you're saying, where is the crest of the wave? When does the wave start crashing? And what if I jump in at that point and start creating at the crash of the wave, in which nobody wants that? So what happens is, you got to understand, I'm more of a brand strategist than I am a designer. And I'll be the first to tell you that as a designer, one thing that's most important is the words. So if you could describe something, describe the brand, a lot of times the design will follow suit. But design is, again, most of the time is very subjective. Brand strategy does not follow trends. Brand strategy there's an old saying that says different is better than better. So that means that people don't only want the better widget, they want the one that's different. Well, look at it, everybody's got these widgets, aren't they great? Yeah, they're blue and green, and everybody loves the shiny points at the end. You go, well, that's great. Well, I've got a better one. Mine spins better. It's like, okay, but no, people want the one with the shiny points. Even if yours is better, they want to be different. People are yearning to express themselves in a unique way. So branding specifically is differentiation. So sometimes the name of a company, the logo, when you look at design, logos, it's a fantastic design. It's beautiful. It wins awards, but it looks like the other 30 companies in that space. So all you got to do is make it different, and immediately you set yourself apart. That's branding. It's not better, it's different. And people will pay more for different, evidenced by our luxury brands, right? Just have to be different.
I absolutely agree. So before we have to get you out of here and everything, I'm going to ask a very unique question that is personal. I don't usually ask this a lot, but as you being a brand strategist, I ask you, what are your 3 favorite brands right now? Like, what are your 3 favorite that you're like, I like that brand, I like that brand, and I like that brand? For me, I'm an Amazon fan. I work virtually. I sometimes don't like to leave the house. It's gonna be a super big perk.
Yeah,
Amazon is amazing for me. Also Samsung, only because I'm not an iPhone fan. Even though I have one, I prefer Samsung, which I do have, and I like it because I just love Android, and Samsung to me is the flagship Android. It competes with iPhone. Absolutely love it. And I'm an Xbox fan. Xbox over PlayStation. So I guess I'm gonna go with those as my top 3 brands for no. I'm sorry, Oculus. Oculus. Huge VR fan right now. So yeah. Oculus has my heart. I don't want to say Facebook, but Oculus has my heart right now. What are your top 3 brands right now that you like?
Well, I would answer that with a question. I would say, well, what makes those, what makes you attracted to those brands?
Oculus, I just love VR. I'm big on, I like tech kind of. So Oculus being the next
step in gaming. But they're not the only player. Why Oculus?
It just happened because I was looking for like a computer. I was looking for like a monitor setup. Like I wanted like multiple monitors because I'm tired of like swiping back and forth. And this company called Immersed VR kept like targeting me for, hey, if you have an Oculus, you can have like multiple virtual screens and stuff. And I'm like, I don't have an Oculus to do any of this. And so because they kept marketing like, hey, get an Oculus, I went and bought an Oculus just to get that app. So that's why I love them. iPhone, I mean, I love my Samsung because I've just been anti-iPhone. I just like to be different in that sense. It's like, oh, everyone likes iPhone.
Well, you like to be different, huh?
I just like to be like, I just want to be different. I love Samsung. Absolutely amazing to me. And Amazon, I grew up on it. My mom has been Amazon since day one, so I was introduced to Amazon as like a very, very young child. And it's just been like something that has been part of my childhood forever. So I love it, but that's me. What about,
and so growing up on brands, it's a pretty strong thing, right? We tend to, if you've grown up on a brand because your parents used it, well, then you have a familiarity with it, right? It's a comfort zone. You understand it. You don't have to learn something new. So the familiarity is somewhat part of that. But for a person who comes across a brand as an adult and makes a decision to, I want to say they make a decision, but they're drawn to a brand. And that's kind of the answer right there. Brand is, people go, well, what's brand? Well, I'm ripping my brand. I got my logo on here, or, I'm wearing my brand, or, they're singing the jingle and it sticks in their head, or they say the tagline and they go, yeah, that's my brand. I love that. Well, it's not really. Those are just elements of a brand. There's so many things that make up a brand. But when you look at it as a whole, brand can be described as the experience the customer has when interacting with your brand in any form. It could be advertising, marketing, could be the product or service itself. So when you are drawn to a brand, so I'm an Apple fan and have been because when I was a young designer and I sat in front of a Mac for the first time, for me, it's ease of use and the power it gave me as a designer, because you gotta understand, I go way back. We were designing with markers and pencils and pens and rules and all this really mechanical, physical things. But the computer revolutionized it. The Mac specifically made designing the one tool you need to do all the things to be expressive. So the power was put in my hand and I saw the future. And it worked so well, so intuitively, it made my life easier. Now, you go fast forward 10, 15 years and people go, they think I'm a tech guy, that I understand computers because I use them. I'm always giving people shortcuts, or did you know this and you that? And I go, look, I don't know anything about computers. All I know is it's made my life very easy. And because it made my life easy, I like it. So to your point, I'm an Amazon fan. Why? Look, I'm a homebody, man. I love staying at home. I like hanging. Look, I'm living my dream life because I got out of the corporate world. I was able to buy my life back. I work from my home. I make my schedule. I work when I want. I work with who I want. And to me, that was a very emotional pull for me. But since I don't like to leave home, I definitely don't want to go to a store, right? Why am I going to drive, 15, 20 minutes to the store to look around to hopefully find the thing that maybe they have or maybe they don't, right? And then what if they have the thing, but they don't have my brand? They don't have a quality brand. So what do I do? So I'm like, I want something to go to Amazon because I found it. It took me 10 minutes. I didn't have to leave my house. It's coming to my door tomorrow. And if I don't like it, all I got to do is bring it back to the UPS store and they pack it up and ship it back. And I get the one I do want. Like, it made my life easy. So I'm a fan, right? So the experience we have is what draws us to a brand. So they're right there. So Apple, I'm a fan of Apple. I'm a fan of Amazon. Those are my two favorites because, again, they enhance my life.
What's number 3?
Number 3. The funny thing is, listen to this. I'm the brand guy who doesn't really like brands. Mainly, I'll clarify. I don't like repping other people's brand. When I say I'm an Apple guy, I almost get a little like I choke on it because it's not that I'm a fan of Apple, the company, or Steve Jobs, who is notoriously not a nice guy, but what is being created that has enhanced my life. I'll say I like the products, I like the service. So I'm not in favor of that, and I'll never wear or display the Apple prominently. I'll never wear an Apple cap. So I just like things that make my life easier, and that's why I couldn't even come up with another brand because I'm fickle. If somebody else, if some new company comes out, like I'm wearing this, I wear a lot of performance gear, and I never heard of this company here. This is an English company, a British company. I like the feel, I like the look, and I never heard of them, and I've never seen anybody wear them, and I could care less. And if I cover this up with my logo, I'll be a happy guy because I don't want to rep it. But what happens is, if you come up with a better one, guess what? I'm wearing that one. So I'm a fan of quality brands.
There we go. I love that. I'm a fan of quality, and I like that. Yes, I am a fan of quality because I will switch. I will switch.
Right. Sure.
I will switch. So I know that that's what we have right there. So thank you so much for joining us. You have been an amazing guest. Before we go though, before we go, I do want people to give you I want to give you a shout out. Where can we follow you at? Drop Instagram, Twitter. Where can we find you?
So my hub is my website. So unleashmybeastbrand.com, unleashmybeastbrand.com is a hub for all things social. You pop down to the bottom of that page and you'll find me all across social media. I can be found. You can Google Unleash My Beast Brand. You can Google Rob Genovesi. I dominate the internet, Angelo, on purpose. I have a YouTube channel called, you guessed it, Unleash My Beast Brand. And that's incidentally where I help designers think more strategically, help them make money with design. I teach them there. That's my educational outlet for designers. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You could find me just about everywhere. And I can be found. So I'm big on right now. LinkedIn is a big presence for me. Facebook is a big presence. And of course, my YouTube channel is always a place where people can learn more about me. And certainly they could always email me. My email is in there as well. If you want to reach out, say hi, ask a question, I'm open.
It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, Ramblers, that's it. Podcast is over. Don't leave yet, though.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on YouTube at OffSource HQ. We'll see you next time.